I'm a chartered counselling psychologist. I don't just call myself that. Some people think that sounds like a nice name. I've been a psychologist for over 24 years. I've been working with clients privately for most of that time, and as well as working as a psychologist, I'm now an international speaker. I work with clients all over the world, and I kind of thought it's about time that I brought the two parts of myself together, because for so many years I've had to discount that part of myself, because as a scientist, we would assume that the psychic world is not scientifically backed. However, it is. There's a lot of scientific evidence out there, and it can be really beneficial and really helpful in terms of our health and our healing. So for me, it very much felt like professional suicide, coming out as the psychic psychologist, but I just knew that I had to do it, and my life story has led me to this place. So I'm actually just going to start off, I think, just by reading just a couple of minutes of the beginning of the book, as nobody's read it and probably nobody knows anything about me. So I'm just going to read that now, and then we'll take it from there, and I'll start to let you know why I wrote the book and how the book can help all of you. Okay, so this is the introduction to the book. My whole family is dead. My mum, my brother, my father, my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, father-in-law, my grandparents, uncle, aunts, all gone, dead. Even my marriage is dead. It could be suggested that I know a few things about death, about suffering, and about grief, and that would be true. I've encountered them all. There's that sudden disbelief stealing your breath as an unexpected dagger twists deep in your heart when a loved one is snatched away in an instant. Then there's that long, laboured death, the kind that took my dad, for example, creeping in over a decade, his body betraying him through a gradual paralysis, leaving his mind untouched, yet there he remained, trapped, locked in, alone. Then there's that all too familiar kind of death, from those twisted vines of cancer suffocating the soul until nothing but a mere skeleton remains. Even that present but absent kind of death that leaves the physical body intact while fading out the personality until it's all but a forgotten memory. The person you once knew, long since gone. That's the harsh reality of life. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter how poor or great your circumstances, your health, or your wealth, the universal truth of life is that in one way or another, death is ever present. Some of you will be connecting with these words, remembering painful losses you've encountered in your own life, whereas others will not. But for all of us, death comes with many faces. It's not only there in the vacant chairs around the dinner table. It's in the emptiness that echoes from the walls of our home when it's time to move on. It's in our relationships once the love is lacking and the excitement has long since expired. And it's in that dread rising in our stomach when that longed-for occupation has diminished to mere obligation. To talk of death, loss, and the permanency of endings outside the therapy room is often seen to be taboo. As a society, we'd rather dismiss the depth of feeling and discomfort that comes along such finality, yet we will all swallow our own dose of suffering at one time or another, in whatever form it takes, and when doing so, can choose to embrace it as an amazing opportunity for growth, for healing, and for transformation. It's through experiencing and accepting the death of what once was and releasing the inevitable aftermath that we can embrace a process of change and healing so that life can be birthed anew. That's what this book is about. It has come not only from my clinical, but from my lived experience. The sudden loss of those I loved is merely one example of the long and painful encounters with life's lessons that have led me to share this process with you today. It was tragedy and illness that forced me to acknowledge how disconnected I was from myself and begin the process of reconnection at every level of my existence: body, heart, mind and soul. It's from this pool of suffering and wealth of wisdom that this book has been birthed, in the hope that it may help prevent you from suffering in the same way that I had to, or at the very least, open the doorway to new possibility. Now, I shared that with you, not to make you depressed, as it may have, but to show you that through suffering we can transform, through suffering we grow, and death is just a new beginning. So, what I want to ask you actually, first of all, before I begin, how many of you here have some kind of a physical illness? Perhaps you've got, it doesn't have to be an illness, a physical problem. Maybe you've got a bad back, you get headaches. How many of you here suffer? We've got some nodding heads. Maybe you don't want to put your hands up. Okay, lots of heads. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. How many more of you also have, not also, but have emotional problems that you are suffering with? So lots of head shakes there. Thank you. So we've got some people here that have put their hands up to both. And how many of you have gone from, perhaps you've gone to hospital, or you've been to the GP or a doctor, perhaps you may have gone to an alternative health practitioner. How many here of you have done that and yet still you are suffering? Can I have some nods of heads? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So that is my point, and that is why I've written this book, that so many people are going from one practitioner to the next, desperately seeking a solution to their suffering, whether that is a physical problem, whether that is an emotional problem, whether that is a life problem, and yet still they suffer. Have actually said that there are nearly 1 billion people around the world that are suffering with mental health conditions, and there are millions upon millions more that have physical health conditions. And the key point here is they can't find adequate treatment. And that was me, you know. When I was 21, I was diagnosed with a hyperprolactinoma, and I was awaiting like surgery to remove this. It's in the brain, it's in the pituitary gland, and I was trying desperately to find solutions outside of myself in order for me to heal. And it was only through reconnecting with my whole self, I said the disconnection that was there following all of the deaths was later on in my life, that I started to realise that actually the reason I had a pituitary tumour, I don't know how many of you are aware, but the pituitary gland, it's connected to the pineal gland, and it's through the pineal gland that we can connect into other realms, psychic energy, that kind of thing. And it was from experiencing so many events as a child that I shut down from, so many of these psychic, paranormal experiences that not only were shut down externally by people around me that didn't understand it, but I eventually shut down from them to myself. And in doing so, I believe it manifested as a physical tumour on my pituitary gland. And it was only through that realization and learning Reiki healing and coming into contact with my energy body that I began to realize and formulate a structure whereby we now have this book that brings the two worlds together. Because through that I developed what I've called my hierarchy of healing. So you may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which states that we need basic level needs met before we can move up and have good relationships, before we can self-actualize and have an amazing life. Well, it's the same when it comes to physical healing, when it comes to emotional, mental healing, when it comes to actually improving the life that you're living. We must first start at the physical level of the self, because we're physical bodies, we're in a physical world, and so that's where we must first ground ourselves, and we must look to seek healing. Now, I'm not saying, I've obviously given you the statistics earlier, I'm not saying don't go to medical practitioners, but what I am saying is that you are far more capable of helping and healing yourselves than you've been led to believe. And so we start with the physical level of the self, we then move into the emotional level of the self, because the emotional body obviously sits within the physical body, and our biochemistry that's generated from those emotions influences the body, and that's where often we can start to generate illnesses. Then we move up in the hierarchy of healing in the book to the mind. So we've got a thinking mind that influences our feelings, which then influences the body, and then we extend out into the energy body, and then up into our relationship with ourselves and other people, because you can only be as connected to another person to the degree that you're connected in with yourself. So within the book, it's very much drawn upon a timeline. So in the beginning, we need to be fully able to regulate our emotions, to be able to be fully present in the current moment. So somebody asked me earlier about the symbol on the book. I've been able to see down timelines since I was a young child. I would be able to see things that would happen in the future, and that I would tell people what was going to happen. And so for me, the book is very much based on a timeline. So we need to begin in the present moment, and I teach people how to regulate their nervous system on each of these individual levels of the self, because we are living in such a fast-paced society that our stress response system is highly activated. We can't be fully present. We're attending to fighting fires in our home life, in our work life, and so we need to be able to regulate that first so that we can be present enough to go down to the past in our timeline. And in the book I go to before, during and after your birth. Everything I talk about is scientifically validated. I even go into past lives and the influence that can have, from research that showed us the influence on our emotions, on our life story really. And also intrauterine trauma, the impact that has. Sadly, this gorgeous girl here, I was pregnant with her during all of the deaths that I mentioned at the opening of the book, and that has influenced her in the womb, because it influences my biochemistry, which then influences her. But there's also research in there that looks at ancestral trauma and the influence that has on a cellular level, but also on an energetic level, and how research has shown that looking at mice and looking at rats, that for at least 3 generations we know for sure that trauma response has passed down. They did some research on, I think it was orange blossom, and they used an electrical impulse on the mice, so that they developed a fear response to this particular smell. And then it affected the areas in the brain. Those areas grew so that they could be more aware to avoid that, because obviously it was traumatic. And then they bred those mice, and the next generation of mice, even though they hadn't been exposed to any of that trauma, were having the same trauma response, and they still had that area of the brain that was highly activated, as if they had experienced it themselves. And then they bred them again, and it was in the next level. So I'm very much bringing together the information that tells us that what you're experiencing now in your life might not actually be your fault. It might not actually be as a result of the relationship that you're having in the present moment. It could be the result of so many other factors from the past. So we go down that timeline into the past, and we become aware of all of these areas within the book. And I give strategies and tools in order to help process that past, again on each of these individual levels of the self. And then eventually we work to the future, and we consciously construct the future life that we want to be living, instead of what we're doing right now, which is living on autopilot because of the fight and flight response. And then what happens then is our past that we've just spoken about is unconsciously projected into the present and onto your future, because the brain looks for shortcuts. You know, we can only know what we already know. And so we need to step back from that so that we can consciously construct the life we want to live. And again, we look at doing that on each of the individual levels of the self. So often you'll hear people when they're talking about manifestation, but they're not necessarily enabling you to consciously construct that and bring it down into the physical, into the present moment. So this all came originally from healing myself from the tumour, and I realised that we needed to release it on the physical level and all the way up into the energetic level. However, if we wanted to call something into our lives, we actually reverse the process. And I call this my release and reprogramming method, and that's also in the book. So that teaches us how we can firstly release what no longer serves us so that we can consciously construct and bring into the physical from the energetic into our thoughts, into our emotions, and down into the present moment, the life we want to live. And that goes the same if you're wanting to release yourself from a physical, a mental illness. It goes the same if you've got a relationship issue, and it goes to the same as if you're just really a bit fed up in your life and you're wanting to make some difference, you know, you're wanting to make some change. So that's very much the process that goes through the book. And as you can see on the subtitle here, it says heal your past, find peace in the present, and transform your future. For one moment, I don't need to convince any of you or tell you that you have a physical body, right? You all know that, you can see it, you can feel it. I don't need to tell you or experience anything with you to show you you've got an energetic body. I'm sure if you tuned in right now, you'd be knowing how you're feeling in this moment, probably quite hot like I am. I don't need to talk to you about your relationships. You know that you relate with other people. And I don't need to talk to you about your thoughts because they're probably going around in your head right now. But how many of you here are aware of your energy body? Because, you know, you have to have an awareness of something if it can be a part of your reality. So I know a lot of you are a bit shy putting your hands up, but perhaps we can just see. I was imagining that, yeah, there's quite a lot of you that have got your awareness of your energy body. Who doesn't have an awareness of their energy body? Who thinks I'm talking absolute rubbish? Amazing. Well, that's good. At least I know I'm not. So I was actually going to do a little exercise with you, but I want to make sure that we make the best use of this time. So as a lot of you have an awareness of that, there are some exercises in the book to help you reconnect with your energy body to have that awareness. But what I will just talk you through now, actually, because I've put these little cards on each of your chairs, and you're probably wondering what they are. There are some QR codes and things on the front. There's a workshop that I'm doing in September on the 16th that you can access online for free. But this I want you to take away. In fact, you could possibly do it now if you like, but this explains to you what I was just talking about with the release and reprogramming method. So we look at those each individual levels of the self, the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and relational. And then what you would do is you're going to connect in with your body and you're going to be listening to the language of the body. I talk about inner tuition and I talk about intuition. And I'll tell you what the difference is for me within the book. So inner tuition for me is what wisdom we are getting from the physical body, from our emotions and from our minds that is giving us clues. We've got clues, they're all there. You know, after all of those deaths, I was in so much physical pain. Again, if you think of the hierarchy of healing, that was coming down, that energy that was around, those thoughts of loss, those emotions of loss, it's got to come out somewhere, and it started to come out in the physical body. So much so that I was diagnosed with a mitochondrial disorder, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. I literally had to stay in a darkened room. I couldn't even twist a handle. I was in so much pain, and that pain was my body speaking the truth of my situation. And so my inner tuition was experiencing that and speaking to me through that pain. In fact, I couldn't actually walk for a lot of time. My legs would buckle from under me through the sheer weight of emotional trauma that I was carrying. And again, the inner tuition speaks through your emotions and it speaks through the mind. So it's about really recognizing, giving space, giving time to listen to those whispers of wisdom that are coming through. But when you start then connecting in with your energetic body, that's what I call intuition. So when we step into the physical body, we're going up to the mental element of the self, we expand out into the physical body, and it's through there that we can contact the higher mind, and it's through the higher mind that we start to get the wisdom through I call it telepathy. I've got lots of words, so you'll see them all in the book, but telepathy is a word I've coined to express what happens when you're in a deeply empathic relationship with yourself or with another person. You start to get information on a telepathic and an empathic level. There will be some of you here, I know already, that are psychologists and will know that when working, and perhaps online, when working with clients, we get whispers, we get information, and that comes through this kind of energy body, and we can connect in with people whether they have a physical body or not. So it's through that telepathic connection that we can use mediumship, that we can use our psychic skills. And so through here you can write down in each of those levels what you're releasing and what you wish to call in to your life. So, if on a physical level, let's just look at what I've just said, you've got some physical pain, you'll be putting the pain in there, perhaps you're not sleeping well, perhaps you have a lot of headaches. On emotional level, you might take a moment and think, okay, well, I've been feeling very anxious, I'm noticing that here in my chest, whatever that might be. And then on a mental level, the kind of thoughts that you're wanting to let go of. What I must add is the reason I've been able to heal myself from multiple physical and psychological difficulties is because I choose not to identify with them. And when you identify with something, then you're effectively wearing that as a part of who you are. And that's the first thing that you'll need to release. Your thoughts are very important in relation to what you're experiencing in this world. In fact, I shouldn't actually be able to speak to you like this right now. Back in November, I was recording the audio book for the Psychic Psychologist. On the last day, went to the Hay House the Hay House Christmas party, a lovely friend of mine over there who was also at the party. The next morning, I was unable to pick up a knife. I literally couldn't cut my food. I really wasn't feeling very well. I'd gone from recording the audiobook to being whisked to St George's Hospital, having been told by Kingston Hospital that I was having a stroke. And they said that it was a grade 7 on the stroke scale, which means long-term acute inpatient rehabilitation. And they said it would take between 6 to 8 months for me to get to to a normal level of functioning, potentially. I used my method. I mean, really, your life speaks to you too. I actually wasn't living in alignment. My life shows me that each and every time you disconnect from any of those levels of the self, something happens, whether it be a pituitary tumour, whether it be deaths, whether it be the ending of a relationship, something happens to wake you up, to get you to listen, so that you then learn to reconnect with the self. And it's that reconnection that promotes the healing. Whilst writing the book, I was going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I really wasn't looking after myself. And for me, I'm somebody that has a lot of integrity. So for me to come out here now for all of you and be talking to you about my book, saying, do this, this is going to heal you, this is going to help you, and yet in my own life, I'm not living my truth, then that really wouldn't work. That wouldn't sit well for me. So I truly believe that happened to me. Very scary. My mum actually died at 56 from a stroke, and lots of my family too. I had to have that experience in order for me to take my healing and my health seriously again, so that I can then be here to do that for you too. So instead of 6 to 8 months, it took me 6 to 8 weeks before I was then standing up talking about my book to people. My book came out in February, and so this is the process that I followed. It's in the book, and I've put just obviously I can only put it on a card, so you've probably got a lot more than you can write in a little thing here. So what you're wanting to release from your life and what you're wishing to call in, and then under that it's what action can I take now that brings me in alignment with that future self I want to be. So we can't just think with manifestation, for example, oh, I want to be happy and healthy, I want the car, I want this, I want that and the other, if you're not living it in the present moment, if you're not living it down on that physical level of the self. So one thing I always get my clients to do is to connect in with that future self, that once you've released the past and the things that are getting in the way, to connect in with how they want to be living their life on each of those individual levels of the self, but then also look to how that chunks down into manageable steps in real life. And so each and every day, picking 3 things, perhaps you can think about that now. What 3 things can you do tomorrow that are going to take you one step closer to becoming that future self that you want? Then write them down, go through your day, check in at the end of the day. You need the accountability, you need the check-in. Check in. Let me look at those 3 things that I really felt were going to help me in my future, and see if you've actually done them. And if not, don't berate yourself, just thinking about, okay, have some compassion. If not, why not? What's got in the way? Is that still in alignment? Is there something else that's blocking that? And that can be really helpful on a practical level for you to move towards where it is that you're wanting to go. I'm aware of time and that you're wanting to do some Q&A, but I'd really just like to get all of you just to take a moment actually while we're here, because it's so easy for you to walk out of here and think nothing more. So let's just use this moment while we can. Just get yourself into a comfortable position. Will only be a few moments. And just allowing your eyes to close if you feel comfortable to do so. And as you're allowing yourself just to check in, just drop into the body out from the mind, and just focusing on the sound of my voice. And as you focus on the sound of my voice, just taking a moment. Just taking a moment to check in with your physical body, with how it feels to be you right now, in this moment. And just notice the chair beneath you. Notice the sound of the air conditioning. Notice any sensations in the body. And as you do so, just bringing your awareness to the breath, and allow yourself to take a nice deep breath in and release, allowing that out breath to take with it any tension. And then bringing your awareness to your heart space. Perhaps putting your hands there if you wish to do so, just to allow that concentration. And just notice how it feels on an emotional level. What's life like for you right now? Really connecting in and noticing. You won't have an awareness of the biochemistry that's flowing through the body. You might just catch your mood. Connecting in with the mind now, paying awareness and attention to the thoughts that perhaps are coming and going as you're sitting here right now. Perhaps remembering some habitual thoughts that come through. And just acknowledging those thoughts. The mind is just doing what the mind does so well. It's teaching us to listen. And now just coming back to the heart space and just imagining extending your awareness now out into the space around you. For those of you old enough to know, remembering that Ready Brek man on the television, that glow around the body, just imagine merging in with that energetic space. And just noticing how that feels. How does it feel when you connect in on that level too? Some people notice a quickening. Sometimes the heart might flutter a little. It can feel a bit like anxiety, but it's just connecting in with a higher vibrational frequency. And from this place, this is where you want to connect in with your higher self. And just imagine doing that now. Just imagining there is another energetic higher part of you that holds all the wisdom that you need to recover from whatever it is you may be carrying, or to change and choose the life you wish to live. And just in this moment, connect with that. Ask yourself, what will serve me best over the next few days, the next week, the next month, that is going to help me move towards where I wish to be in my life. And as you do so, bringing into your awareness the future self you want to live, the future you. What do they look like on a physical level? What are they doing in their life? Where are they going and who is around them? Really connect in with that part of you. And as you do so, just notice how they're feeling. Really connect in with that future you and how you wish to feel each and every moment of your life. And what kind of thoughts does this future you have? What do they think about themselves, about other people, and about the world around them that allows them to live this life? What is their energy like? What are their relationships like? Who is around you and supporting you? Just taking a moment to connect in with that right now. Just imagine it's on a screen and you can step into that future version of you. Try it on for size. Identify with this you and not the you wish to leave behind. So fully connecting with that future you right now, I want you to imagine a timeline opening up in front of you. Perhaps imagine a carpet unfolding. And as you're sitting where you are now with me here in this room, just imagine that future you on a screen in the distance. See it playing out just as you wish it to be. Float above your timeline and meet that future you. Bringing that future you now back towards the present moment in your mind's eye. Doesn't matter if you can see it. The intention and the feelings are what you're needing. Just dropping in some imaginary moments in time to take you to that place, like the gingerbread man, so that when you're living your life, you can be aware that you're on your way to meeting that future you. Looking back out down that timeline, noticing at set points that you've dropped into that timeline, noticing what you're doing, how you're feeling, noticing that you're on your way, on the timeline that you choose to be, on the timeline that takes you where you wish to go, not one that's been constructed by the past. And in your own time, allowing yourself to come back to now, feeling the body sitting on the chair, and in your own time opening your eyes. Just taking a moment, taking a breath. I'll give you a minute if there's any of you that want to jot anything down that came up. The card is done so that you can write on the back, so just take a moment to write down anything you need to. Actually, while you're doing that, I shall read a little bit from the beginning, a little bit from the prologue, because it's less depressing than the beginning. The preface. Sometimes we must trust in a new reality so that we may fully transform. Have you ever had the privilege of watching a butterfly break free from the comfort of its chrysalis and engage with the struggles necessary for its survival? As a compassionate observer, it's so easy to feel compelled to help free this delicate damsel. Yet it's this fight for freedom that marks the beginning of a distinctly new chapter in its life. Its crypt-like cocoon, its own creation, was crafted as a safe space for progression, yet has simultaneously kept the caterpillar captive and bound. The new world of transformation that lies in wait is only unlocked through experiencing the very pain from which we may seek protection. A pain without which it may never fully develop, will most likely die, or remain destined to live a life without flight. Clueless to the bounty that lies ahead, it must surrender to the solitude, submerge itself in the suffering, and allow the old reality to wither and die. But by letting go of the past, and by trusting in the process of transformation, it remains open to new possibilities and to new perspectives as it soars up into the limitless sky. Like the butterfly, this book shows me spreading my wings. It shows me shedding the skin of my former self, surrendering suffering, eliminating illness, and transforming my pain. Within its pages, I'm revealing my whole, authentic self, and embracing all that is uniquely me. Like the caterpillar, I could have stayed in the darkness that engulfed me for so many years, leading a half-life, unable to see the full beauty that could emerge if I was to surrender to the process of change. Well, surrender I did. I chose to trust and to let go. No longer would I accept a life led by limitation. So let me help you break out from your own self-imposed cocoon. Allow my words and my experiences to open your eyes to a new reality and guide you on your own journey of self-discovery and transformation, so that you too may take flight. There we go. So I shall open it up if anyone has any questions, any queries, would like any more information. Hello, hi.
Thank you very much, that's great.
Oh, you're welcome.
I just have a question about the spiritual side of things. you include spirituality on here and in the book as a way of healing, and I just wondered if you could talk more about that in the sense of, do you believe that everyone has like a sense of spirituality and skills that they can develop? And do you think that is linked with our own healing? Do you feel like you need to connect to that to heal? And then, as an extension of that, how do you extend that and then begin to heal others? Does everyone have the capacity to heal others? Or, if you could just speak more about that.
Thank you. What was your name?
Nadia.
Nadia, lovely to meet you.
Nice.
I can definitely speak on that. I think we've all got a physical body. We've all got, the chemistry going through us. We all have an energetic body. It doesn't matter if you believe in spirituality or not. It is science. Quantum science shows us that we're all energetic beings at a subatomic level. In many ways, we're not much different to anything else at a subatomic level. So you don't need to necessarily believe in spirituality. In fact, I often interchangeably use the word, the energy body. I use energetics because, for so long it's very hard for me, even now, I'll be honest, to talk about spirits and, all things like that. Because even though I've had, and there's a few in the book, but the next book's going to touch more on some of my paranormal experiences. Even though I've experienced all of these things, I still struggle. So you don't need to have a belief in spirituality in order to help and heal yourself. You actually don't. I truly believe we're all capable of helping and healing ourselves. We just need to connect in on all those levels of the self. And by doing that, by virtue of doing that and connecting in with your energy body, you'll start to have an awareness of other people's energy too. So once you're more aware of your own, a bit like emotions, right? You've walked into a room, you've felt emotions, you know what's going on. You can tend to feel that through the energy system. And so through that, you are capable of healing another person. Yeah, you don't need to believe in spirituality to be able to do that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
I've kind of heard of this, obviously yourself and others as well, kind of heal themselves in this way. And, are you aware of anything like this, these ideas being introduced into the NHS or something as a kind of complementary therapy?
Oh, you might laugh.
We don't, they can carry on injecting people and the rest
Absolutely.
of it, but why not do this on the side?
Yeah, I agree. What was your name?
My name's Sadiq.
Sadiq. Lovely to meet you, Sadiq.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, so there's some really exciting things. So I said earlier I felt like I was committing professional suicide coming out and doing this. Well, actually, I have been invited by Pezzy Life, Pezzy UK, who are owned by an American company, Pezzy Incorporated, and they are the UK and Europe's biggest provider of continuous professional development for psychiatrists, psychologists, counsellors, social workers, nurses, and I am delivering my approach to them. They love it, they've read the book, and so it's beginning. It's definitely beginning. I've got friends that are GPs and doctors that absolutely agree with me. In fact, I believe that whether you're a therapist, whether you're a physical doctor, whether you're a surgeon, that part of the training needs to be learning about the energy body, connecting in with the energy body. I had a friend and her daughter was over in America. She was, I think her daughter was 19, 21, around about that age. And it was during COVID, so my friend hadn't been jabbed, she wasn't allowed to go out there. She had this phone call saying that her daughter had had a heart attack. And, she was in hospital, and obviously in America they were paying out thousands and thousands of pounds. She asked me, and I connected in with her daughter. It's really hard to say this to someone. And I said, honestly, I can only tell you my experience, but I can feel that she's absolutely fine. She hasn't had a heart attack. She's having anxiety and panic, and it's about her relationship, blah, blah, blah. She then saw another consultant over there in America, a few more thousands of pounds, came back to the UK, had more tests. She never had a heart attack at all. She had panic disorder and there was problems in her relationship. So had those doctors had an awareness of what was happening with her on an energetic level, if they were able to connect in, then that wouldn't be necessary. But that's part of two of the reasons I wrote this book. Well, there's lots of reasons, but two of the main reasons. One was to get this information out to people that can't afford to go and see a therapist, or And you know, there's massive waiting lists, but also it's to get my approach out there because it is different. And part of that is to get it out to clinicians. And so, you know, that's starting, and that's what I'm going to be, you know, pushing as life goes on. So, yeah, great question, and I absolutely agree.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Enjoyed your presentation.
thank
I
you.
apologise, I thought it started at 5:30. I
Oh,
had a bit of a rude awakening.
oh, bless you.
Thanks for being late. I'm fascinated by what you said. Like you, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, and what I think is, I think sometimes our habits drive us to overwhelm, and we just keep going, even though the body's saying stop.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, I've been doing yoga since the early 1980s and having alternative treatments like reflexology, osteopathy. So when you start doing like meditation practices or Chinese martial arts and understanding of Ayurveda or the Chinese holistic system, you know, like the earth, air, fire, water, wood,
Absolutely, yeah.
body psychology, I think that's really helpful. And I've been following a similar journey to you. And I've also looked at homeopathic miasms by Dr. Thomas Harding.
Okay.
That's been very, very insightful. And also Watson's upstairs sells various essences like flower gems, wax flower remedies. They're really helpful. I just wanted to say thank you. And
Thank
I agree
you.
with a lot of our problems do have mental and emotional direct work their way down. This is because I'm an astrologer, so I
lovely.
looked at 5 generations back, the miasms in the family, astrological importance, and like the recessive gene being passed down from generation.
Amazing. Oh well. Oh no, thank you. And I'm pleased to see that you're taking a holistic approach. And you know, I really do hope that you manage to get yourself in a better place. So it sounds like. Okay.
But the more London hospitals have integrated medicine actually are familiar with this. So I actually presented research to my asthma to my homeopathic shop. And also Helena's family constellations helps people explore various facets of ancestral trauma. I found that very insightful.
Amazing. Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting us know. Appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else have any burning questions?
I would like to ask you, actually, if you don't mind, sharing one of your paranormal experiences stories.
You would like to hear one of those? Okay. My daughter's looking at me. Pardon? She would like me to share one of my paranormal stories. Okay. Are we all up for hearing this? We're all okay in this room? Okay. So I'm going to go right in there I'm going to tell the big one. Granddad. Okay, so as I said in the beginning of the book, my father, he suffered from a very rare brain disease, and over a period of 10 years he gradually lost all functioning. It's a multiple system atrophy, so he lost all functioning in the body until he was totally locked in the body, consciously aware but physically unable to even move an eyelid by the end. After my mum died, I've had lots of things all my life and experiences. And I sat with my dad, this is before he was unwell, and I said, Dad, please, if you die first, please can we have some kind of a sign? Please can you show me? Because I'm fed up. My scientific mind would try to find an alternative explanation for what was going on, but yet my lived experience was telling me something else, so I was really struggling. Anyway, he promised that he would show me. And I made some silly comment, it was just like, maybe you could like move the toilet roll. I mean, why I would say that? And basically when my dad was, he was very poorly, I said to him, Dad, remember you promised that you would show me that we, whether we do or we don't survive. I said, but only if it doesn't harm you, if you can. I said, but don't, whatever you do, come to the toilet with me. I don't fancy that idea, something else, but make it something that I can't dispute. Quite a few things were happening after his death. Often I'd had obviously a lot of trauma, so I didn't like too much noise. I would have the radio off, and it was a digital radio, and I'd be thinking something in my mind. In fact, one of the things I was thinking was, how can I bring the psychic and the psychologist together? Like that's just not going to work. That's career suicide. And then what started playing was the Beatles. There will be an answer. Let it be, let it be. And I'm like, well, okay, this happened often, lots of different things. And I'd just say, okay, it's a digital radio. Perhaps it's just suddenly come into, some area where it's, but really the reality was my thoughts were being answered. It came to the funeral, and I was staying at my cousin's house. The morning of the funeral, I felt like I'd been visited by my father. I could feel him. Long story short, after my mum died, he was with somebody else, and there was lots of things in the family that happened. And he said to me, he started talking to me, he said, don't worry about things, I will always be with you. Some things had happened on my phone a few days earlier, and one of my dad was a sergeant major in the army. One of his army colleagues had made contact with me. Anyway, the same guy came up to me at the funeral and started saying, your dad is always with you. Some of the things that had already been said. Anyway, long story short, lots of things happened, but the things I'm going to tell you about are we all went for an Indian meal after the service. And we were all lined up on this table, and my brother, who'd also died, his wife and my nephew were there. My nephew was charged with doing the music for the ceremony. And he said, oh, I see they didn't play the Phil Collins track. And then my brother's wife said, oh, but they played the Celine Dion track. I bet that was Roy, the lady he married after my mum. And in my mind, someone said, no, that's the track we played at your mum's funeral. And I'm like, okay. And I said, oh, I think that's the track they played at my mum's funeral. And then all of a sudden, over this Indian music that was going ding-a-ding-a, 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 everybody heard it, was the panpipes to Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On, playing over the top of this music. For about a good 20 seconds, everybody heard it, apart from my ex-husband and my cousin's boyfriend, who were completely shut down to everything. There were a good 12 people or so, I think, weren't there? Like, everybody heard it. So we were like, okay, that's a bit weird. Anyway, I'm not onto the main bit yet. Went back to my cousin's house that evening. Everyone had gone to bed. We were sat on the sofa. I was on the sofa, she was on a chair. I was talking about all these things that had happened in my life, and saying it really feels like each time I come off like a spiritual path, something happens to pull me back on. And then there was this deathly cold, like like if you're walking into a butcher's freezer, you see them on these horror films, don't you? It felt really cold, icy cold. The hairs on my arm stood on end, and I said, I feel like my dad's here. And then it happened again. And then I started talking, and every time I said something, it would happen. So I got up and I sat next to her and I said, look, and she felt the cold come with me. And then all of a sudden I couldn't speak. Now bear in mind, my dad couldn't speak. He couldn't, the muscles didn't work, he couldn't speak. So she sat with me on the sofa, and my hair was moving and this thread was moving. And I was saying, I'm feeling like my dad's trying to communicate with me. And she said, oh yeah, no, I think you're right. And then I couldn't speak again. And she looked at me and she went, I can see Uncle Tony. This is my cousin. You're still there. Your face is there, but superimposed over your face is Uncle Tony. I can see his eyes, his mouth, his jawline. And I was like, I could feel it, I couldn't speak. And then obviously I freaked out. I wasn't trying to do anything. This kind of was a spontaneous, it's called transfiguration. This spontaneous transfiguration happened. So I got really frightened. It stopped. We sat there, I composed myself, and then I said to my cousin, okay, I'm going to communicate with him. And I said, if you can come back, then please do. He came back. We communicated with him. She asked if he could do it on her so that I could see him, and that was very much a no. But that is one thing that was it was huge to experience, but it's the tiniest thing that I'm going to leave you with that for me allowed me to step into the power of this book. The following morning, I had a conversation because we got a bit frightened in the end, had a conversation with my cousin. And she said to me, I just had a shower. We were talking about my dad, and I said, oh, I don't know whether that was my dad who got angry or blah, blah, blah. She just had a shower, and she said, so I know this sounds weird, but I think your dad's just spoken to me. And he said to me that your dad's your dad, he hasn't changed, something like that. Anyway, I'm then in the shower. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I wish my dad would talk to me in the shower, you know, I wish that I could find out some information. And then the same kind of thing was, oh no, that's just really weird. I'm not going to invite my dad in the shower with me. And then, from nowhere, my dad said in a very profound, very grounded voice, I see you as you see me right now. It's not like that. It's just energy. And it was that awareness, it was that communication, just that sentence that actually convinced me beyond all doubt. Even though I'd had things said to me throughout my life, it was just the reflection of his experience and mine in that moment that really touched me. And I'm like, right, okay, yeah, I'm doing it. So, there you go. You're welcome. 6 o'clock on the dot. I don't know whether anyone else wants to ask any questions.
Did you ever study Wilhelm Reich?
No.
Because he deals with energy. He looked at the Chinese. Sees the body is one energetic thing, and that's just the norm. That's nothing. We became more stupid.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Well, we're
But
going to change that,
Reich,
right?
He understands energy and sexuality. I haven't talked about sexuality, which is where we come from. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's such a now we live in a country that's telling you can't whistle at a woman, she can call the police, and yet they teach 5-year-olds sadomasochistic sex. It's completely mental in this country.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's affecting people, and it's affecting young men. In fact, I'm going to bring out a T-shirt saying "Sex is physical prayer."
Okay.
Just so it's not all this horrible negative stuff all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Interesting.
Well,
Hello.
I've got 2 things to say.
Okay.
I'm not in the least bit spiritual
Yeah.
myself, so the only way is up.
Okay. Yeah.
But where to start, given that I'm actually okay.
All the science is in there.
So the other thing in my mind is, well, you give the impression that a person can heal everything about themselves of a physical nature. At the same time, well, we are all going to die.
Yeah.
So where is the line beyond which it's not possible?
Well, absolutely. And you know what? It's not possible all the time for everybody. And for me, you know, I go through stages myself. I'm not now like fully healed and out here going, hey, look at me, I've healed myself and life's amazing. It's a continuous practice. You know, I'm often disconnected. My daughter will tell me, I'm often disconnected from myself, but it's catching that and going, okay, what's this teaching me? What do I need to learn about myself? So it's not healing for healing's sake. It's healing for having a better life in the living. Yes, of course we're going to die at some point or another, and this isn't about putting off death, because as I said at the beginning, death is a rebirth. You know, it's just a new beginning. So it's about having a better experience and learning to look after yourself, and you know, on each of these different levels of the self. But it's a continuous process. So if you're surrounded by toxic people, if you're in a toxic environment, if you're around toxic energy, if you're around toxic emotions all the time, if you've got toxic thoughts or you're hearing it from someone else, then you're going to get unwell in one form or another. And so it's about helping and healing that part of your life to live a better life. Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay. I can't tell you where to draw the line, but yeah, thank you. Hi there.
So, in terms of when you talk about death and we kind of return to kind of like the being energetic beings, how then do you join that in also with the idea of past lives? Because I remember you talking about past lives being, so do we kind of hang around as energy for a little while, just from your perspective of it?
Yeah, obviously I don't remember.
Of course, yeah.
I can't say for sure. I mean, looking at the research, you know, there very much is a lot of research in support of past lives. My teachings are very much, you know, that you have some kind of a choice in whether you do or you don't come back and live another life. I think you can. So I'm conscious of time, but for example, I have had energy bodies of babies come to me. So, you know, where they come from, you know, they want to be born, they want to come back through again. And so I think that from that energetic realm, that there are choices as to whether you do or you don't. But obviously, not having an awareness fully of that myself, I can't say anything for sure. But just by the research, that seems to be what happens. And I'm not the only person that connects in with spirit babies and things like that. So, thank you. You wanted to say something?
Firstly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a very open-hearted talk. Thank you for your personal shares.
Thank you.
My question to you is, you said that the body always tells the truth.
The body speaks your truth.
It speaks your truth.
Mm.
And so when the body speaks your truth, what is it? How can, because you said you've written the book so that we can help ourselves and not necessarily go out there and try and, you know, get help. So what you've done all of that, and still you feel that you haven't been able to understand why your body is behaving in the way it is, because it's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
How do you tap into that when you think you've exhausted everything?
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid question, because that's where we come from, right? We're trying to find something outside of ourselves, and you know, constantly looking here, there, and everywhere. And then if we come into ourselves, and let's say you read the book and you do the techniques, you do the exercises, and yet still you don't know. I would say that perhaps you're becoming overly identified with staying in that one place. So I would again re-look at that, but on terms of not knowing where you're going. So for example, I talk about emotional freedom technique in the book, and that's a really useful tool for coming unstuck with things when you don't know what they are. So, you know, the past life stuff, there might be past life things that are affecting you, but you don't know what they are. How are you going to know what they are? But you can use the emotional freedom technique to release that on an emotional level without knowing any of that. Again, you just might have an inkling. So for me, I would try anything and everything. So long as it's on those individual levels of the self, the book covers so much in order for you to do that. But truly, I honestly believe that if you move from the inner tuition to the intuition and combine the two, that the answers will come. You just have to allow yourself to focus in on the meditation, allow yourself to open the mind, and it will come through. It will come through. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.